The sun was merciless that afternoon, hanging high and heavy over the shimmering blue of the Oakwood Residence's community pool. The air smelled of chlorine, sunscreen, and the faint sweetness of blooming jasmine from the garden just beyond the gates. The water rippled lazily under the hum of cicadas, reflecting the soft glint of Marcus's key ring as he locked the gate. It had been a long day. He'd already checked the pumps, logged the pH balance, and written up a few maintenance notes for the board. The community pool was due for a 48-hour closure, routine cleaning, minor tile repair, and a long overdue inspection. For Marcus, this was just another box to tick on a long list of responsibilities. As the new property manager, he took pride in doing things right. His father, who had owned the Oakwood complex for years, had always told him, "Respect the place, and it'll respect you back." He adjusted his cap and sighed, glancing around the empty pool deck. The lounge chairs were scattered haphazardly, a few pool noodles floating near the edge. A pair of sunglasses had been left behind, forgotten on the diving board. Marcus picked them up, set them neatly on a chair, and double-checked the lock on the gate. That's when he heard the sharp, unmistakable click of high heels on pavement. "Excuse me," the voice sliced through the thick, humid air. Marcus turned, already knowing the tone, that entitled blend of outrage and authority that came from someone used to being obeyed. A woman in her mid-50s stormed down the path toward him. She was pale, wrapped in a floral cover-up that billowed like a flag of indignation. Her oversized sunglasses nearly swallowed her face, but not enough to hide the deep frown etched into her expression. "What do you think you're doing?" she demanded, pointing toward the padlock he had just fastened. Marcus blinked, momentarily confused. "Ma'am, I'm closing the pool for maintenance. It'll reopen on Saturday. There's a notice posted by the gate." But she was already shaking her head, disbelief hardening into fury. "No, no, no. You can't just close it. Who gave you permission?" He hesitated, tilting his head slightly. "The management. I am the management." That should have been the end of it. But the woman took a step closer, her phone now in hand, thumb hovering over the screen like a trigger. "Don't lie to me," she said coldly. "I've lived here for 20 years. I know everyone who works for this community. I've never seen you before." Marcus exhaled slowly, forcing a polite smile. "I just started last week. My name's Marcus Green. If you'd like, I can show you my ID." "Oh, please," she scoffed, cutting him off. "I know what's going on here. You people think you can just come around, pretending to work, hoping no one will notice." Her words hit like a slap, sharp and deliberate. Marcus felt the muscles in his jaw tighten, but he didn't move. He'd dealt with this kind of tone before, the kind that didn't want answers, only someone to blame. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "the pool is under my supervision. If you check your resident app or the bulletin by the clubhouse, you'll see the notice with my name on it." But she wasn't listening. She'd already raised her phone, angling it toward him like a weapon. "I'm calling the police," she announced, her voice trembling with self-righteous adrenaline. "You're trespassing on private property." Marcus's chest rose and fell slowly. He could feel the heat prickling against his skin, not from the sun, but from the absurdity of it all. Around them, a few residents peeked from their balconies, sensing the commotion. Someone whispered, "That's the new manager," but the woman didn't seem to hear. "Ma'am, please," he tried one more time, his voice steady, calm. Too calm. "This isn't necessary." But she was already speaking into the phone, eyes flashing with satisfaction. "Yes, hello, I'm at Oakwood Residences, and there's a man here closing the pool. I don't think he's supposed to be here. He looks suspicious." Marcus turned away, running a hand over his face. He didn't know whether to laugh or sigh. Suspicious. That word, always so vague, yet always so pointed. He leaned against the gate, staring at the glimmering water on the other side. A few dragonflies skimmed the surface, undisturbed by the rising tension. He remembered his father again, telling him not to lose his temper, that dignity, in the end, would always say more than anger ever could. By the time the woman ended her call, Marcus had already taken out his clipboard again, double-checking the inspection form. "The police will be here any minute," she said smugly. "We'll just see who's really supposed to be here." Marcus nodded, not looking up. "Yes, ma'am," he said softly. "We'll see." The sun glinted off the locked gate behind him, and the quiet hum of the pool pump was the only sound that seemed to make sense anymore. The air shimmered with heat as the woman, Mrs. Ellison, Marcus finally remembered, stood near the locked pool gate, phone clutched in both hands like a badge of power. Her chest rose and fell with self-righteous fury. She kept glancing toward the street, as if her call to 911 had set justice itself in motion. Marcus remained where he was, clipboard against his hip, expression unreadable. He'd worked in enough neighborhoods to know how quickly things could spiral once someone like her picked up the phone. But this was supposed to be different. Oakwood Residences was his family's property now, his responsibility, his chance to prove himself after years of managing smaller, rougher complexes. He'd earned this. He'd put on the uniform with quiet pride that morning, thinking the day would end with paperwork, not sirens. A bead of sweat traced down his temple as the faint sound of police chatter came from the main road. Mrs. Ellison turned sharply toward it, her tone softening into anticipation. Finally, she muttered, "Someone who'll take care of this." Marcus didn't move. He simply waited, eyes steady, shoulders squared. He didn't want to appear nervous. He wanted the truth to do the talking. Moments later, a patrol car rolled into the lot, sunlight flashing against its windshield. The two officers inside, one young and alert, the other older, wearier, stepped out. The younger one adjusted his sunglasses as Mrs. Ellison practically ran to meet them. "Officers, thank goodness you're here," she said breathlessly, gesturing toward Marcus. "That man's been tampering with the pool gate. He claims he works here, but I've never seen him before. I think he's trying to break in or something." The older officer looked at Marcus, taking in the uniform, the clipboard, the calm stance. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "did he threaten you or anyone else?" "No, but he looks suspicious," she said, lowering her voice as if revealing a dark secret. "He was closing the pool without authorization." The younger officer turned to Marcus. "Sir, can we see some identification?" "Of course," Marcus said evenly, reaching into his front pocket. He handed over his wallet and ID badge, the one printed with his full name and title, Marcus Green, Property Manager, Oakwood Residences. The officer read it, his expression neutral, then looked at Mrs. Ellison. "Says here he's the property manager." Mrs. Ellison blinked, flustered. "That can't be right. I know everyone who works here. I've been on the WA board for years." Marcus spoke softly. "You might be thinking of the previous manager, Mrs. Jenkins. She retired 2 weeks ago. I took over after she recommended me to ownership." The older officer's brow furrowed slightly. "Ownership? You mean?" Marcus nodded. "My father, Harold Green. He's the owner of Oakwood Holdings. He asked me to take over this site personally." The younger officer looked between them, sensing the unraveling of the situation. Mrs. Ellison's face began to lose its color. "Oh," she stammered. I didn't realize. I just thought." "You thought what?" Marcus asked gently, folding his arms. She opened her mouth, but no words came. The officers exchanged a glance, the silence growing thicker with each passing second. Marcus didn't press further. He simply said, "Next time, you could ask before assuming the worst." The older officer handed back his ID. "Everything checks out. Sorry for the misunderstanding, Mr. Green." "No harm done," Marcus replied quietly, though inside, a dull ache of disappointment settled deep in his chest. Mrs. Ellison stood frozen, her phone still in her hand. "I was only trying to protect the community," she muttered weakly. "I understand," Marcus said. "We all want to protect something. The trick is knowing what actually needs protecting." The younger officer couldn't help but smile at that. "Good advice," he murmured before turning toward the patrol car. The two men walked back slowly, leaving Mrs. Ellison and Marcus standing by the gate, the sound of cicadas filling the space between them. For a long moment, neither spoke. Mrs. Ellison's bravado had evaporated. She looked smaller now, her voice almost fragile. "I really didn't know," she said finally. "I just didn't recognize you." Marcus nodded once. "Now you do." She gave a quick, jerky nod and turned away, retreating down the path toward her townhouse. Her heels clicked unevenly this time, the rhythm broken. When she was gone, Marcus let out a long, steady breath and unlocked the pool gate again. The latch squeaked in the quiet air. He walked inside, kneeling by the edge to check the filter system one last time. It was then that something caught his eye, a glint of metal beneath the surface of the drain cover. He frowned, reached for his toolkit, and carefully lifted the panel. Inside was a small waterproof case, wedged deep into the compartment. It looked deliberate. He pried it open and stared at the contents. Several spare keys, a folded maintenance log, and a few crisp envelopes filled with cash. His stomach tightened. It wasn't part of any repair order he knew of. The old manager, Mrs. Jenkins, had mentioned some unusual billing issues before she left, but nothing concrete. Now it made sense. Someone had been siphoning money from the community funds, disguising it as maintenance expenses. He sat back on his heels, shaking his head slowly, the sound of distant sirens fading into the background. Mrs. Ellison had been wrong about him, but she'd accidentally stumbled right into the truth. The sky had turned the color of honey and smoke by the time Marcus finished filing the maintenance report in his temporary office. The events of the afternoon still clung to him. The accusation, the police visit, the awkward apology that never quite came. Oakwood Residences had gone quiet. The cicadas were humming louder now, and the pool glowed beneath the amber light, smooth and still, as if nothing had happened. Marcus sat behind his desk, the small waterproof case he'd found earlier resting in front of him. He had already checked its contents twice, a maintenance log, several folded receipts, and 4 thick envelopes of cash. Everything pointed to months of quiet theft. The signatures on the logs matched the old manager's handwriting, or at least, someone trying to imitate it. It was sloppy work once you looked closely. Whoever did this didn't expect anyone to care enough to check. He leaned back, running a hand over his face. He should call his father. But part of him hesitated. He wanted to handle this himself, to prove that he could do more than inherit the position, that he could actually manage. He reached for his phone, ready to take photos for evidence, when the sound of hurried footsteps echoed down the hall. The door burst open. Marcus. It was Aisha, his assistant manager, breathless from running. "You need to come outside right now." He stood quickly. "What's wrong?" She hesitated, eyes darting toward the door. "Mrs. Ellison. She's back, and she brought someone." Marcus frowned, following her outside. The night air was thick with humidity. Down by the pool gate, Mrs. Ellison stood again. Only this time, her anger had been replaced by unease. Beside her was a man in a crisp gray suit, clutching a briefcase. His face was unfamiliar, but his confidence wasn't. "Mr. Green," the man said smoothly as Marcus approached. "I'm Richard Collins, Regional Director for Oakwood Property Management. I understand there's been some confusion today." Marcus kept his tone polite. "That's one word for it." Collins smiled, tight and professional. "Mrs. Ellison contacted me earlier. She was concerned about how the transition was handled. We've had issues with new hires misrepresenting their authority before. I'm here to verify your credentials." Marcus studied him for a moment, then reached into his pocket and handed over his company badge. Collins examined it, then looked up. "Green," he said slowly. "As in Harold Green, my father," Marcus replied. The man's demeanor changed instantly, the sharp confidence melting into surprise. "Ah," he stammered. "Of course, I wasn't aware the new manager was family." Mrs. Ellison looked between them, confusion spreading across her face. "Wait, what, family?" Marcus nodded. "My father owns Oakwood Holdings. I was assigned here last week to audit the site and handle some pending maintenance issues, including some that seem questionable." He opened the case on the nearby table, letting the pool lights glint off the hidden envelopes. Collins' expression froze. Mrs. Ellison leaned forward, curiosity overriding her embarrassment. "What's that?" she asked. "Evidence," Marcus said simply. "The previous manager left something behind, or someone wanted me to think she did. Either way, there's been money missing. Community funds. I found them hidden under the pool drain." Collins swallowed hard. "That's a serious accusation." "It's not an accusation," Marcus said, holding up the maintenance log. "It's a record, and your signature is on half of these invoices." Aisha, standing behind him, gasped quietly. Mrs. Ellison's hand flew to her mouth. Colin's face drained of color. I don't know what you're implying, he said, voice unsteady. I'm not implying anything, Marcus replied evenly. But I'll be forwarding all of this to corporate and to the board. They can decide what happens next. Mrs. Ellison took a slow step back, the weight of the day finally catching up to her. I didn't realize, she murmured, her earlier arrogance dissolving into shame. Marcus turned to her, his voice calm but edged with something firm. You didn't realize because you didn't ask. You assumed. You saw someone who didn't fit your idea of who belongs here, and you called the police. If you hadn't done that, I might not have come back to the pool so soon, and none of this would have been found tonight. Her lips trembled. I'm sorry, she whispered, barely audible. He gave a small nod. Apology accepted. But let's both remember, not every danger looks like the person you expect. For a moment, the air between them felt still, heavy with truth. Collins shifted uneasily, clearly knowing he was trapped. Marcus turned back toward him, snapping the case shut. I'll expect your statement in writing, he said. And I'll be in touch with corporate first thing in the morning. Collins nodded stiffly, muttering something about miscommunication, before hurrying off into the night. Mrs. Ellison remained by the pool, her reflection trembling in the water. Marcus watched her for a moment longer, then turned toward Aisha. Let's call security. We'll keep this room locked until the police can collect everything. Aisha nodded, but she smiled faintly. You handled that well. Marcus exhaled, looking back at the pool, the same one that had started the whole mess. Sometimes, he said quietly, doing your job means standing still when everyone else panics. The rippling light danced across his face, and for the first time that day, he felt something like peace. The truth was finally out, and Oakwood, his father's legacy, was safe again.